You walked in with a cup of gold tokens, walked out with a plastic ring that cost 2 cents, and it was the greatest night of your life. The carpet was sticky, the noise was deafening, the air smelled like pizza, sweat, and electricity. You were 5 years old, and your father said, "When these are gone, we go home." And you held that cup like it was everything you owned, because it was. That was Chuck E. Cheese. And for 30 years, it was the center of the universe for every kid in America. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you are watching from. You remember the tokens. You remember the weight of them. Heavy for their gold colored with that rat's face stamped on one side. You held one between your thumb and finger and you slid it into the slot and you heard it drop and the machine came alive. For 30 seconds, the world shrank down to just you and that screen and nothing else existed. Skee ball, you rolled that wooden ball up the ramp and it jumped into the 50-point ring and you screamed like you had just won the Super Bowl and nobody looked at you because every other kid in the building was screaming too. The basketball game where the hoop moved back and forth and you missed 9 shots out of 10, but the one you made felt like the greatest athletic achievement of your life. The racing games where you sat in a plastic seat and gripped a steering wheel, and for 90 seconds you were a real driver on a real road, and nobody could tell you different. And when the game was over, the machine made a sound, and tickets came pouring out of the slot in a long paper ribbon, and you pulled them out carefully because if you pulled too fast, they ripped, and a ripped ticket was a tragedy. The tickets. That was the real currency. Not the tokens, the tickets. You collected them in your hands first, then around your wrist, then you stuffed them in your pockets, and when your pockets were full, you carried them in a ball against your chest like something sacred. You counted them. You counted them twice. You counted them 3 times because you needed to know exactly how many you had before you walked up to that prize counter. The prize counter was a glass case full of things you wanted more than anything in the world. Plastic spider rings on the bottom shelf for 10 tickets, erasers shaped like animals for 20, Chinese finger traps for 30, bouncy balls that glowed in the dark for 50, and way up on the top shelf behind the glass where you could barely see them were the real prizes, the giant stuffed bear, the remote control car, the lava lamp. Those cost 1,000 tickets or 2,000 or 5,000, and you knew you would never have that many, but you looked at them every single time because dreaming was free. Then you handed your tickets to the woman behind the counter, and she fed them into the ticket muncher, and the machine chewed through them, making that sound that every kid who ever went to Chuck E. Cheese can hear right now in their head. And the number came up on the screen, 47. You had 47 tickets. The glow-in-the-dark yo-yo cost 50. You were 3 short. You stood there with your heart in your throat, and the woman looked at you and looked at the yo-yo, and she reached into the case and handed it to you anyway, and you walked out of that building holding a toy that cost 3 cents to manufacture like it was made of gold. And the animatronics. You either loved them or they terrified you, and for most kids, it was both at the same time. That stage with the curtain, the lights dimming, the music starting, and then they moved. Chuck E. Cheese in his vest and his cap with that guitar. Mr. Munch, the purple monster on the keyboard. Jasper T. Jowls, the dog, on the banjo. Pasquale, the chef, on the drums. Helen Henny singing backup. Their mouths opened and closed, their heads turned, their eyes blinked. And if you were 5 years old and sitting at a table with a slice of pizza in your hand and those robots started playing a song, you believed with your entire heart that they were alive. Not machines, not puppets, alive. And you sat there frozen watching them, and the cheese on your pizza got cold and you did not touch it because you could not look away. Some kids cried, some kids hid behind their parents, some kids walked right up to the stage and put their face as close as they could get and stared into those glass eyes looking for something they could not name. That was the magic. That was the thing no screen has ever replaced. A mechanical animal on a stage in a pizza restaurant that made a 5-year-old believe in something that was not real and feel something that was. The birthday parties. If you had your birthday at Chuck E. Cheese, you were royalty. The paper crown on your head, the reserved table with your name on it, the cake with the frosting and the candles and 10 kids around you singing and you blowing them out and making a wish you did not tell anyone because you believed it would come true. The party host who set everything up and ran the games and made sure every kid got tokens and every kid got cake and every kid went home with a goodie bag. And then Chuck E. himself walked out, the man in the costume, 7 feet tall with the big head and the painted smile and the purple vest, and he walked right up to your table and he said, "Your name, your name." He said, "Happy birthday," and he handed you something and your friends looked at you like you were the most important person in the world because Chuck E. Cheese just said, "Your name." And your mother was standing against the wall with a camera and she took a picture and you can still see the flash in your memory and that photograph is somewhere in your house right now. A kid in a paper crown next to a giant mouse with 10 friends around a table covered in pizza and cake and ticket stubs and that look on your face that says, "This is the single greatest day I have ever lived." And then there was the ball pit. Hundreds of colored plastic balls in a sunken pit, and you took off your shoes and you jumped and you disappeared. You sank to the bottom and came up laughing and threw a ball at your friend, and he threw one back, and you were both swimming in plastic and your socks were filthy and your hair was a mess, and you did not care because you were 6 years old and this was paradise. Was it clean? No. Was it safe? Probably not. Were there lost shoes and lost socks and a half-eaten slice of pizza somewhere at the bottom? Almost certainly. Did any parent in 1989 think about bacteria or liability or hygiene when their child was laughing so hard they could barely breathe in a pit full of colored balls? Not one. Not a single one. Because that sound of a child laughing in a ball pit at Chuck E. Cheese on a Saturday afternoon was the sound of childhood itself, and every parent in that building would have paid any price to keep it going. The man who built all of this was not a restaurant owner. He was a video game inventor who wanted to work for Disney and got rejected 3 times. Nolan Bushnell grew up in Utah and studied electrical engineering, and he worked at an amusement park as a teenager running the games on the Midway. That job shaped everything that came after. He founded Atari in 1972 and built Pong, the first commercially successful video arcade game, and he changed the entertainment industry overnight. He hired a young engineer named Steve Jobs and put him on the night shift because Jobs was difficult to work with. In 1975, Jobs came to Bushnell and offered him 1/3 of a new company he was starting with his friend Steve Wozniak. $50,000 for a 33% stake. The company was called Apple. Bushnell said no. He said no to 1/3 of Apple because he wanted to build a pizza restaurant with singing robots instead. He later told a biographer that Jobs asked him to put in $50,000 and he would give him 1/3 of the company. Bushnell said he was so smart he said no. He added that it is kind of fun to think about that when he is not crying. Apple is now worth more than $3 trillion. Bushnell's estimated net worth is $50 million, but he built something that Apple never could. He built the place where you had the best birthday of your life. In 1977, Bushnell opened the first Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theater in San Jose, California. He chose pizza because of the wait time. While families waited for their food, they played games. While they played games, they spent tokens. While they spent tokens, they had fun. And while they had fun, they forgot that the pizza took 20 minutes, the noise was deafening, and the carpet was sticky, and none of it mattered because their children were happy. He named his main character after a costume mistake. He had ordered a coyote suit for his animatronic mascot. What arrived was a rat. He considered calling it Rick Rat's Pizza. His marketing team told him no one would eat at a restaurant named after a rat. They came back with Chuck E. Cheese, a 3-smile name, they said. You cannot say it without smiling 3 times. Try it right now. They were right. By 1981, the company went public. Arcades were booming, and families were pouring through the doors. But Bushnell was not the only one who saw the opportunity. His own franchise partner, Robert Brock, went behind his back and teamed up with an animatronics designer named Aaron Fechter to create a rival chain called Showbiz Pizza Place. If you grew up in the South or the Midwest, you might remember Showbiz instead of Chuck E. Cheese. The Rock of Fire Explosion, Billy Bob the Bear, Fats the Gorilla, Mitzi Mozzarella. Those animatronics were better than anything Bushnell had. More movement, more personality, more life. Showbiz opened in 1980, and within 2 years, it was beating Chuck E. Cheese in revenue per location. Bushnell sued, and he won in court, but the damage was done. The video game Crash hit in 1983, and it took everyone down. Arcades lost 40% of their revenue in a single year. Kids were staying home with their Atari consoles and their new Commodore 64 computers, and the novelty of putting a quarter into a machine in a dark room was wearing off. Pizza Time Theater lost over $15 million. Nolan Bushnell stepped down in 1984, and the company filed for bankruptcy. The following year, Showbiz Pizza Place bought the whole thing for $35 million, and the two chains merged. Over the next few years, every Showbiz location was converted to Chuck E. Cheese. The Rock of Fire explosion robots were stripped down and rebuilt with Chuck E. Cheese faces, the same mechanical bodies with new heads, new costumes, new identities. Aaron Fechter's creations were erased and replaced. If you went to your Showbiz on a Friday night in 1989 and Billy Bob the Bear was singing on the stage, and you went back 6 months later and Billy Bob was gone and a mouse named Chuck E. was standing in the exact same spot, moving the exact same way, you knew something was wrong. Even if nobody explained it to you. You were 7. You did not understand corporate mergers, but you understood that the bear you loved was gone, and something else was wearing his body. That was one of the strangest corporate transformations in American history, and it happened in a pizza restaurant, and most people never knew. The combined chain grew. By the early 1990s, there were over 500 locations across North America. Chuck E. Cheese became the birthday party destination for American children. Not one of the options. The option, the crown, the cake, the tokens, the tickets, the ball pit, the animatronics, the goodie bags, the overwhelmed parent sitting at the next table, drinking a flat soda and watching their child run from machine to machine with a fistful of tickets trailing behind them like a ribbon. For working families, it was affordable. For busy parents, it was effortless. You walked in with nothing but your wallet, and you walked out 2 hours later with a child who had the best day of their year, and you did not have to cook or clean or decorate or entertain. Chuck E. Cheese did all of it. That was the deal. That was why it worked for 30 years. And then piece by piece, they took it apart. The tokens went first, replaced by plastic cards in 2017. No more gold coins, no more weight in your hand, no more sound of metal dropping into the slot, just a tap, a beep, a number on a screen going down. The physical tickets went next, replaced by electronic points in 2020. No more paper ribbons, no more counting, no more stuffing tickets in your pockets, no more ticket muncher with that sound that every kid knew. The ball pit had already been gone for years because of liability, insurance, and health codes. The tubes and climbing structures started disappearing too. COVID shut every location in March 2020. The company filed for bankruptcy in June. They came out the other side in December, but they came out different, smaller, quieter, digital. And then in 2023, they announced that the animatronics were being removed from every location in the country except one, Northridge, California. One restaurant out of 500 would keep the band. The rest would get screens, dance floors, trampolines, technology, but not the thing that made Chuck E. Cheese what it was. Not the mechanical animals on the stage that made a 5-year-old believe in magic. Not the curtain going up and the lights going down and the music starting and Chuck E. picking up his guitar and looking out at a room full of children who had no idea he was made of metal and plastic and wires. That is gone now. From 478 restaurants, gone. And the parents who took their kids there in the 80s and 90s and tried to take their grandchildren there in 2024 in and saw a building that had the same name and the same logo and the same pizza and nothing else they recognized. No tokens, no tickets, no ball pit, no band, just a room with screens and a dance floor and a trampoline and a costumed character walking around giving high fives, and it was fine. It was clean and bright and modern and fine, but it was not the place they remembered. It was not the place where their child wore a crown and blew out candles and stared at a stage full of singing animals with their mouth open. It was a building with a name on it and nothing inside it that matched the name. The man who started it all is still alive. Nolan Bushnell is 83 years old. He was at the Northridge location in November 2023 when it reopened as the last legacy store. The man who invented Pong, who hired Steve Jobs, who said no to Apple, who once bought a rat costume by accident, and who built the loudest, stickiest, most magical place any child had ever walked into, stood in a pizza restaurant in California. He watched animatronic robots play a song for a room full of children, and he smiled. Because that was always the point. Not the tokens, not the tickets, not the stock price or the bankruptcy filing or the private equity buyout. The point was the 5-year-old sitting at a table with pizza on his face and a paper crown on his head, staring at a stage full of singing animals. His mouth was open, his eyes were wide, and his whole body was absolutely still, because for 30 seconds he believed they were real. If you had a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, tell me what year it was. If you remember the tokens, the tickets, the ball pit, and the animatronic band, tell me what you remember. If you were the kid who was 3 tickets short and the woman behind the counter gave you the prize anyway, I want to hear that story. And if you were the parent who sat at the next table and watched and said nothing and felt everything, tell me about that too. I read every single comment.